I want to keep to myself.
Especially when it comes to my personal data online. I really don't want any hacker snooping on me, so I use NordVPN.
So overnight, the rules of the international financial system, today it's this, and tomorrow it's going to be something else. And there's going to be curveballs coming. And people right now are distracted with this virus. They're looking over here, and they're looking at Trump, and they're looking at Biden, and they're looking. And I'm looking at it, and I'm upset. I'm saying, like, they're gonna. How many billion people are gonna start to do that because these freaking clowns? And then, but the real curveball is over here. And then people are looking at that, and the real game is actually the $100 trillion they're going to make on these biotech investments and printing up artificial livers and AI and automation and IoT. And so on this hand, I'm not in the election. I don't make money on Trump. I don't make money on Biden. And on this infrastructure, when they're going to print up this $100 trillion, I'm going to be there. Skycoin is going to be there. I'm going to benefit from that immensely. So even while I'm crying watching these clowns, I know this is going to happen, and I'm not crying because I'm like, oh, my private jet, and what vacation, what country am I going to buy when I get that $10 billion? Right? I'm not.
Synth, it's
So
you are the mastermind behind all of this. The evil genius.
I saw this coming 20 years ago. Like I went, I was crawling out of the cradle. So over here, I feel bad for that billion people. And on here, I'm going to make money on this. And on there, we did biotech, we did IoT, we did a lot of stuff in agriculture for Skycoin. And there's not going to be a government after they're done with this. There is not going to be a government that is not going to tell us, come here, here's $100 million, we'll do a bond, and then these private equity funds will come in and buy the bond. There's not a government. Singapore, China, Japan, Vietnam, UK, London, United States, Canada, Panama. There is not going to be a government that tells us no. We're going to say, of course, come here, let's do it over here. They're going to be fighting over because I saw this coming. I made the investments in this IoT and biotech and rare earth metals and fuel cells and things, ceramics for small modular nuclear reactors. I've been buying up these companies for like 20 years now. Like even since I got out of college, I left software and I started trying to get into those industries, and it was really I'm buying this small company and this and this. So I sort of know what this was going to happen. I didn't know they were going to have like a communist revolution in the United States, and they were going to just, pull out the police. And you realize, imagine you have Portland, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you have this government, and imagine the government pulls out the police. What does that mean? It means if the police are a gang, the police go around in their collars patrolling, they see another person with a gun, they pull out their gun and shoot them. They control the turf, and the police are supposed to be under the law, and if the police do beat some guy up or shoot him, they can be sued, and they're under the law, right? The law, the court system, and the court system is supposed to be under the elected government, right? So you have this gang under a bunch of lawyers, under our supposedly elected government, under our political party, which is another gang. And I'm not saying the system is fair. It works, right?
Mm-hmm.
If one gang doesn't control the territory, another gang is going to control the territory. If you pull the police out of a ghetto, right? Black gangs, Hispanic gangs, drug gangs are going to take over. So if I pull the police out of this neighborhood, now I have a bunch of Mexican gangs take over and say, this is our turf. And they're going to set the laws, and they're going to charge the businesses protection money, and they're going to start taxing them. And so once you have a gang take over a city like in Mexico, the gangs control the ground. The police don't control the ground. The police are scared of the gangs. The judge, if he goes against the gang, will get killed. He knows who controls that city, not him. The gangs control the city, the drug dealers in Mexico. And if there's someone suing you, you go to the mafia guy. You get, hey, I have this problem. Can you solve it? How much will it cost? It's $10,000. You pay him $10,000, and he'll have one of his guys, like some 16-year-old kid, go to the guy suing his house. He'll knock on the door, pull out a gun, shoot him in the head, and then pick up his body and throw it in a ditch. And $10,000, even $400 in some countries. And will they go to jail? Will they get arrested? No, the police will come. They'll fill out some form. Killed by gang member. Yeah, I got killed by a gang member. And they'll put him in some database. And he was another guy, another 10,000 people that killed by gang members. So in Portland, if Soros, if you have these people pull out the police, whoever has money to organize gangs locally can take over and kill their opposition for social justice. It'll be very social justice-y, right? And all the oppression and and you see these people, and they're ready to kill, they're ready to murder. And if you control the media, anyone even suggesting that these people killing these people on the street, they're racist, Nazis, xenophobe, whatever, and they'll just shut them up, right? Just, you won't even hear about it. So this is a model that has actually been employed in other countries by certain groups. And it's a really, and I talked about this 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and sometimes there's things that need to be done, and they do it any way that they can, and sometimes the way is dirty. They did this in the Philippines, they did this in Malaysia, they had this thing called the Malaysian model for putting down a civil war. This is in Burma, the government is exterminating and genociding people. You know, it's still going on. They have civil war going on for 80 years now between different ethnic minorities. So in a lot of the places in the world, this is how the system's run. If you told me that they were going to go into the United States and do this, and that this was their solution in the United States, I thought I would say you're crazy, but it's happening. And so they do one thing and one thing and one thing, and each of these changes seems pretty innocent, but the result is genocide. The result is just they get to murder whoever they want, clean the slate. It's a cultural revolution where they can wipe out their generation with force. They can go into the city, and anyone who doesn't agree with their political platform is going to live in fear of being murdered, their family killed. They're going to move out, and then the resistance is going to be in the rural area. Then they're going to send the military from the cities, their strongholds, to exterminate the people in the rural area. So what they're talking about is a civil war in the United States, except in the United States, the civil war is between the North and the South. Now it's going to be between the rural areas and the cities. And the cities are actually 50% Republican, but when you make people live in fear that they're going to get murdered because of their tweets, those people are going to either get killed, they're going to shut up, or they're going to flee, because those are their only 3 choices. And you can't do this above ground. You can't have the government do it. You can't have the police do it. But you know, so it's really, to me, I know this because I talk to intelligence people. I talk to people. I've had dinners with people who started civil wars and Maoist insurgencies, and I got invited to do cryptocurrencies for people that were, groups that had been fighting a civil war for 80 years, and they told me how they're being exterminated, how their grandfather was, this and that, and I saw that what actually happens in Cambodia and Burma and in the Vietnam War, and how what you see when you live in Shanghai and Beijing and New York and Chicago, and you live in these really big cities with all this infrastructure, you realize this is a really different situation than how 90% of people on Earth live. I've been to Africa, I've been to Nairobi, I've been to Tanzania, I've been to Zanzibar, I've been to Zimbabwe, I've been to South Africa. I've talked to people on the ground. I've seen and how it is in the media, and the reality is, you have to remember, is if you can do something, you have the ability to do something. I have the ability to take this pen and write something, right? If I have the ability to do something and I choose to do it, it will happen unless someone stops me. And so if you have someone and they have money to pay a gang to kill their opponents, and they can get away with it, and they'll do it. And they can do it, they will do it. And the gang member might get arrested. He might be, but the person who paid the gang to kill that guy is not getting arrested. You understand that? So these criminal elements in society, so this is something really depressing to talk about, is we're talking about genocide, and we're talking about civil war, and we're talking about a cultural revolution. And I don't want to see that in a Western country. And I'm really shocked that they're going down this route.
Yeah, we don't want to see it in any country, right? And I agree with you. I don't think the rollout, the consequences of this are going to be any good. I think they're much, much worse than certainly I can imagine. But on the optimistic side, for those that are watching this, gold, silver, Bitcoin, and also Skycoin. You okay if we have a look at the Skycoin price chart? Yeah. And then you can talk about what's happening.
We're going to have to finish off because I'm going to get dinner. But yeah, so Skycoin, we just released coinhours, and we had a really nice in last week, 40% pump, and everyone's rushing in and what's going on? What's going on? And we're releasing the Skywire VPN, and we're getting the 1.0 version of the CX out, and I'm trying to reorganize the marketing efforts. And to be honest, though, the coronavirus shut down a lot of the stuff we're doing. A lot of people can't come back to the office, they can't travel. It's really, we had a lot of people that were on vacation for Chinese New Year, and they couldn't come back to the office because of the virus.
Right.
And schools are shut down, so we can't do events at universities. We were supposed to start teaching CX at universities, and the children still cannot go back to the schools. Almost so a lot, and we had some infrastructure government projects and things that we were going to do, and that got, no one could do meetings, no one could fly around, everything is on hold. So but anyway, we're basically doing the VPN, we're getting our products, and I think that if this bubble's coming, that we have to start scaling up HR, and so I'm doing a lot of administrative things, and then I'm also dealing with our tsunamis. We've had so much rain in Shanghai, like my roof is leaking, and we have so much water that if you open a window, the water will come in blow into your building horizontally and flood your building. So we've been getting like flash tsunamis and things like, I'm going to get a cup of coffee and then 4 tons of water drops from the sky on me out of nowhere. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. And if people want to keep up, I'll have all the links in the description below. But I imagine most of the people who are watching this are already keeping up in some way or another through the Telegram channels and stuff. Anything else you want to say? Let us know about Skycoin. What's coming down the pipe?
So I think that when we started, we went from a penny to $50 in the 2018 bubble. And that was crazy. And back then we had no hardware wallets. Like we have our hardware wallets, and we have our SkyMiner, and we have our CX and our program. Like we had nothing when we were at $50. Then we went to the altcoin winter, and the whole market died. And now we're going back into this crazy bubble, and it looks like it's just retracing 2018. And this time I think we have enough experience to know what we have to do and what we did wrong and what we did right, and how not to like be crushed, because it was just really crazy, honestly. And I think that now we have everything. We have our programming language done. We have our Skywire done. We have our everything that we said that we were going to do is finished. And now we can actually start bringing in users and having organic growth. And I think that the most exciting thing for me is that we're releasing the VPN product, of course. And we're also releasing products for businesses like VLAN products and this will be the first year that a business can actually install the hardware and we can start testing it and so on. And that's going to get us a lot of user growth and a lot of adoption. And we're going to be more like a consumer electronics company that also has blockchain and things like that. But CX, I think, is going to be ready very soon for decentralized social media. And what's happening right now with the governments, and we could go out for 2 hours, so I don't want to get into this, but there was a platform that someone started because of the censorship on Twitter and on Facebook. And it's censorship that's political. Like Twitter bans 150,000 QAnon accounts. People talk about QAnon. Twitter says they're going to ban you. And you post, and they ban the links to websites. So you can't link to this website because we don't like it, because you have to vote for Biden. And if you don't vote for Biden, we're banning you. And when they say that, it's crazy. And even the EU comes in and they say you have to censor this guy. The EU government came into social media sites and said, we've appointed this independent hate speech authority, and you have to let them censor this election campaign. And if you don't, we're fining you $10 billion. So you have the EU government using a nonprofit independent NGO to censor election campaigns in other countries because they say it's hate speech. And if they don't do it, they're going to be fined. So it's very clear right now that we're going to have a decentralized social media. All the data on Facebook and Twitter, it's going to have to be moved to something like blockchain in the next 5 years. So I think Skycoin is the best platform to do that. And I think that the most important thing we could do for humanity is to get this technology out, because I think it's going to get to the point where people are going to be being killed for what they say on social media by lynch mobs. Right now, you get fired, you get harassed, you can, there were Cisco, this guy says, well, blah, 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 blah. My ancestors didn't own slaves. I'm from Brazil. Why do I have to feel guilty for being white? And the CEO of the company has to fire that guy and say, oh, I'm sorry, that's it's hate speech, because this Brazilian white guy doesn't feel guilty because some other white people own slaves. It's like, what? But I'm from Brazil. I'm white, but I have to feel guilty because you're bullshit American politics, because you Americans, whites own slaves. What? And this guy's like, oh, my grandfather was murdered in the Holocaust, and I have to feel guilty because I'm white. Like, what? It's just it's just out of control. And these companies are firing people for their political expression. So what that means is you can't put your name on anything. And these companies are putting laws now stating that they have to give the name, Twitter has to register the ID card of the person in the EU so that the government can know if you say something, they can have their NGO group funded by the government organize a lynch mob to make sure that person gets fired or harassed or shut up or banned. So the government, these NGOs are being funded by the EU to attack people for opposing immigration of, you know, people that probably wouldn't be approved through legal immigration routes. Like if you had to vet the people, some of the people coming in have like tuberculosis and diseases, and they didn't even vet the people. They don't even know who their names are. And they're saying anyone who says that you need to check the refugees coming in to figure out who the hell they are, whether they're terrorists, or whatever, yeah, you're racist. And then these people rape someone, and you find out that this guy murdered 4 people in Syria. And why did they let him in the EU? But if you say that we need to vet the refugees, then you're racist. And you have to have they have an NGO funded by the government to attack people opposing the EU government policy, which is absurd. So I think that everything in our lives has been politicized, and every corporation, every government, every group is getting government money to organize lynch mobs, to attack people. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy, but it's happening. So we need to have decentralized social media because our current model of media is not working. And governments are even printing up money under national security so that certain special people can buy out media outlets and own them on behalf of the people who got them the money to buy out the social media. So if you look at the people in the Clinton Foundation, if you look at Clinton's campaign manager, John Podesta, and you look at the CFR members, Max Boot, he now writes for the Washington Post. And Bezos hired a bunch of CIA guys that are basically refugees from the State Department and the CIA and the Clinton, who all got jobs at Amazon or the Washington Post. And they got a really cozy $700 million government contract from the CIA to take over the data system of a bunch of government agencies they want to spy on and control, and use the money. And then he immediately buys the Washington Post for $700 million, $400 million, and then hires John Podesta and a bunch of CIA, Clinton State Department refugees. So this group, it's really crazy when the government is printing up all this money, and then this money comes around and it's being given to these billionaires so he can buy out the media, so he can give, push agendas by the people who gave him the money, right? So the media is not objective. It's just, everyone is lying, everyone is bad, everyone is corrupt. It's all scam, and the public is sort of in between these gangs.
Yes.
And everyone's lying about everything.
Synth, I absolutely cannot trust cannot trust the mainstream media because they lie. Cannot trust the alternative media because they lie as well. Well, there's that as well, right? But we're all human beings, right? Ducking and diving and scheming and skiving. Speaking of John Podesta, I'd like to get your thoughts on Ghislaine Maxwell and what's happening there.
I don't even know. I tried to look at it, and I tried to first of all, figure out who owns veterans today. And there's this other group called AIM, which is American Intelligence Media. Figure out who owns that and who's running it. Where the money's coming from? What people? And are they on the CIA? How many groups are there in the CIA? Is it the State Department? Is it an Israeli intelligence op? Is it funded by like a coach, some renegade billionaire? Is it one group? So you have to figure this out, because one group says that all the problems are the Anglo Alliance, and another group says all the problems are Zionists. And another group says, not the Zionists, it's the Jews. Another group, but they don't say the Jews. Another group says, because they're also allied with the Jewish group, but the Jewish group's funding this NGO. And so if you drew a map of Syria and Lebanon and Saudi Arabia, and you drew a map of all the people fighting each other, it looks like all these arrows. I can't even figure out what the fuck's going on. There's 15 different groups as far as fighting every other group. And if you look at the media, it's the same thing.
Yes,
it's the same thing.
Going back to the metaphor I used earlier, right? If you drew a map of a city, of a deprived part of a city, whether it's in London or Los Angeles or New York or Karachi or Lagos or whatever, and you say, okay, this gang's got this bit of turf here, this gang's got this bit of turf here, this gang this bit of turf here.
This guy owns this coffee shop, and this guy.
That's right. Now we got the whole world. Now we got the whole world, right? And we got this gang over here, and then there's this gang over here, but they're supported by this other gang that's fighting this other gang. I mean, we haven't even touched upon, I'm sure you know, we haven't even mentioned what's happening in Libya. Erdogan, what he does with Turkey, and then the possible war between Egypt and Ethiopia that's brewing. Oh my God. Anyways,
I can tell you, in the United States, the transnational group that owns 80% of GDP, who owns the Fortune 500, there's 4 transnational banks, 4 defense contractors, 4 groups within the United States government. And someone did it, they call it the super whatever. They say the 4 entities that own the earth. And these groups own 80%. The Fortune 500, top 500 companies own 80% of the GDP, of the economic production in the Western countries. And these countries are the majority of the global GDP, but they're not growing very quickly. The real growth is in the industrial world. So even though they own all this GDP in the developed world, and they control, this is Australia, Britain, Israel, Germany, France, Italy, United States, Canada. It's all one set of companies owns 80% of the economic production, and they employ 6% of the population. And they're owned by these groups. And these groups are all cross-owned and investment things and like BlackRock. And I don't know if it's one guy, like you're saying, oh, like one evil guy, but there's a network at the top, and these families are all intermarried. So if you actually look, if you look at the Rockefellers' estate, they have this estate maybe 3,000 acres, and there's 300 houses like group in this, and each one they have like a house, and then there's another smaller house which is the guest house, then there's another smaller mansion which is bigger than a skyscraper for the servants and whatever. And you look at the people who live in this plot of land, of Rockefeller land, and these are all people who married into family or married a Rockefeller or a cousin, and they have 300 Rockefellers, like family members that are all married. This guy's married to a Swiss, he was married to a Sloth, he was married to a, and at some days when I'm thinking clearly, I can remember all these freaking names and I can remember that all the names and the Smiths and the Colemans and the whatever, and the French Rothschild, the German Rothschild. But you look at these groups, they're all intermarried. And this guy's cousin, sister's brother, and it's really, you just look at it, it's just like, what the fuck? And globally, there's like 300,000 people that own all the infrastructure and all the factories and all the stuff. And I've met them, and they're not involved at the top level. But at the top level, in the US, in the Western group, there's 4 groups. And they're the American transnational oligarchy, and they built the American post-World War II transnational financial system. And these 4 groups, if they decide something's going to happen, it's going to happen. But they don't have control, and they're fighting each other. And they get together and they say, we should do this, but the other 2 block them. So they say, it'd be better if there's only 3 groups instead of 2. So they might purge one of those 4 groups, might purge the other group. It used to be 8 groups, and then over time they consolidated power, right? And what's going to happen is maybe there's 3 groups now, and then they're going to say it'd be better off if there was only 2. And then when there's 2, they say, oh, it'd be better off if only 1 group was controlling it. Then if only 1 was controlled, then the 2 sides, left hand would start fighting the right hand, right? So this is never going to end. And they're invested in the developing world because they're getting 15% returns. They're not making money on the UK and the United States. They're making all their money in Indonesia and Malaysia and whatever. What's going to happen though is the US dollar is going to fall apart. The US is going to lose they're going to lose this international financial system they've built since World War II is going to collapse. Then we're going to go to multipolar world. And in the multipolar world, within Malaysia, there's going to be 6 or 8 groups fighting internationally for power. Malaysia is not going to be one country. It's going to fight against China and fight as a bloc. But within the bloc, the people in the bloc are going to fight against each other. So what we're going to have is instead of 4 groups that control all this stuff, we're going to have 500 groups, 600 groups, 700 groups, 800 groups. Everyone who wants to fight and wants to be in this fray is going to have a part. Even within China, do you think everyone agrees with Xi? Do you think the Chinese Communist Party, do you think there aren't groups in the Chinese Party who all agree on policy and and one group wants this for Israel, the other group wants the opposite, and this group wants this for Malaysia, and the other group will lose money if they do that. So we're going to go into a free-for-all. And in this free-for-all, there are going to be 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 people fighting. And my goal isn't to be Highlander. My goal is to stay out of the fight, because the groups that actually start fighting are going to be exhausted. They're going to be annihilated. They're going to be stripped to the bone. If you have $100 billion in assets, and you have 100,000, you have 1 million people under you, lobbyists, lawyers, factory workers, managers, politicians. You have 100,000 people or 1 million people under you in your hierarchy, and you start a war to the death with another person who has $100 billion and all these people under him. He's going to start trying to have you poisoned, assassinated, murdered, investigated, have the government start raiding your factories, finding you. I know this because I was in the altcoin bubble. I had 8 lawsuits. We won all the lawsuits. I only have 2 enemies, and they're a joke. But they caused me so much pain in the ass. And I didn't get to the level where people are blowing up cars and car bombing and poisoning and murdering and assassinating. and sending police over to the office, and I got like 4 lawsuits. We signed a lawsuit. They lost the lawsuit. I'm like, just pay the fine, shut up, go away. Why are you causing problems? Get on with your life, And these people will eventually move on. And I learned firsthand not to get involved and drag that in the mud with that bullshit, because it will cost you so much money, so much time, so much bullshit. Sometimes, and I learned, just avoid it. Don't have any enemies. Just keep your head down. Shut up. Take the money. Enjoy your life. Don't piss anyone off. Enjoy your life, right? I learned that very quickly last 2 years. And if I had if someone asked me to take sides between 2 of these groups, I won't do it. And I know in China there's the red families, and this side wants you to take their side, and people get their heads chopped off because they supported this group instead of that group, and that group lost. So they got purged. Their whole family got purged from the Communist Party. They got killed, murdered, arrested, invested. It's like, if they told you, they even know, like, it's okay to be at this level, but if you stick your head up too high, you're gonna get mowed over, because you just don't have the power, the money, the resources to fight a war, to make one of these people your enemies. So I think Skycoin, our job is to sit there in the background and benefit from these groups fighting each other and throwing shit at each other. We're making the decentralized media. We're selling them the guns, the ammo that they're going to need to fight this war. So we're like the British coming in, taking all the German and French gold to sell Germany and France bullets to shoot each other. We'll just sit there. Yeah, you want bullets? Give us your gold. Give us your gold. And at the end of World War I, Britain ends up with all the gold because they had the naval fleets to ship the bullets. And Germany and France ended up with all their bullshit, all their stuff annihilated, and all their children dead in a ditch. And Britain's sitting on their gold.
You are the and Skycoin is going to be there to pick up the pieces. Now, Sid, I want to ask a few questions about Skycoin, 1 or 2, and then we're going to have to finish up, right? So one is, when is the VPN going to be publicly available, roughly?
We're testing it now, and then we're doing a review to see when we can release it. And I think it looks like pretty soon. But after it could take 2 weeks for them to do a release, because our releases are much faster than they were before. But we release something, and then they have to do testing, and because basically, if something's wrong, it breaks 3,000 people running the network. Have to go and upgrade their computers because we screwed up the auto updating. So sometimes it takes 2 weeks of testing before we'll push it out, and then we still have problems. So we're trying to get that faster, but it is what it is.
And that's a decentralized VPN that people can run on their computers, or do they need to have a SkyMiner or a SkyWire antenna?
We're going to have just software right now, and eventually a dedicated hardware VPN, and then a mega VPN that you can have a company of 300 people, and we can do 10,000 people through this thing, 10 gigabits at full line speed, with multiple computer cores and multiplexing, and companies that are located next to each other can also run an Ethernet cable between them, and it can do what's called multi-homing. So you can buy 3 cable modems and plug it into the box, and out of the box, it will use all the bandwidth. You can run a cable to your neighbor, and you and him can both multi-home your cable modems. And this is it's going to be really interesting to see what people do with this. This is what I've wanted for a while, and I think that we need this too, because we're putting things in like a coal mine or a gold mine or a factory or a warehouse, and we're building out. This is really a next generation network for what we see the evolution of networking technology, which is I eventually am going to have this network on trucks and oil pipelines and aircraft, and I want to have satellite, and I want it on naval ships, and shipping vessels, and we have people on a shipping vessel. And they're 120 kilometers offshore, even 5 kilometers offshore shipping, and they don't have internet. And so the government said, can you give them internet? And I said, yeah, we can give them internet, because these people want to sit there and watch cat videos and YouTube and text message and send photos. And can you imagine being only 5 kilometers offshore, and you can't use WeChat or your Telegram or your check your email, and you're just stuck on this boat. And so this is like revolutionary, which is the city has 150 shipping vessels, and we can give those people internet, and the government looks really good, and they get to check their 5G. Yeah, we're doing 5G. Yeah, 5G, AI, robotics. Yeah. And so we want to do projects like that allow us to demonstrate the capacities of this network, and then later on, anyways, there's unlimited opportunities for us once we get this working for the core networking technology in different markets. and Huawei and these other big companies and Cisco, they don't want to go after this. We're going to a much more bespoke market where it's only 150 ships. You know, are we really going to make money on that? No, we're not going to make money on it. We're going to break even. The government grant is pretty small, but it allows us to develop our technological capacities for that market. And then if we get another customer with a similar need, then, you know, there's some stuff like that, like an oil rig might give us a lot more money than a bunch of shipping vessels, you know, whatever. So I'm really just excited about, and then there's some really cool stuff like that I can't even talk about, but we found out, like, you know, these countries in Kazakhstan, and they have these radio networks, and I thought they were using the stuff from the Cold War, and it turns out they don't even have stuff from the Cold War. And they just have nothing. And I'm like, oh, okay. And they're trying to buy a network, you know, it's some stuff, like I really like this, like going into these like really Cold War Soviet era things, and these people were like trained in the 1980s by like the, you know, the GRU or something, and then they had this other guy come in, and then he declared himself a dictator, then he got, you know, this and this, and then you look at the radio equipment, and it's like 50 years old, and they're like, we want a new system, but we don't have money to buy it. And then you have this banker, and he's like, okay, give us this forest, and we'll loan you $20 million to buy this radio, because we really like this forest, because you have this wood that we want. And like, you know, they're being really, you know, anyway, you just, I get to talk to these people, and these bankers are doing these weirdo deals. How this broke country wants this radio system, and say, okay, don't give it to them for us in 20 million, but because they're not going to be paying for it anyway. And I'm like, well, and blah 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 blah. We're going to give them a financing deal. Okay. I'm like, what?
We could talk for hours and hours and hours, right? You and I. And I did say to Synth before that I was a bit worried if we're going to have enough time for this one, right? But one is, I just want to say on the VPN, I think VPNs are really, really important, and I you know, as soon as that comes out, if you or one of the team could let me know and stuff, and I'll do something on that. Really appreciate that.
It'll be
great.
For
anybody who wants to get involved, you know, join the Telegram group. The many Telegram groups there are for Skycoin. Go investigate. This is an OG of a project. It's been around for a long time.
We've been around 10 years. Yeah. I worked on Bitcoin, actually, porting it from Windows to Linux. That was my first intro to Bitcoin. I was on the mailing list, and then I got told about it. I got pulled in to actually do the software and all this bullshit. And so yeah, I think I could be making more money doing other stuff. Like if I went back to a hedge fund and this and that, but I think that humanity is going to be exterminated unless we get this decentralization done. And I don't see any other company doing it right. Like I know that there's 10 companies, and we don't have any competitors, because I've done the math. I've gone through their white papers. I looked at their source code and what they're doing, and they're dead ends. Like this guy did like multi-ring signature with short signature. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but it's not going to scale to 8 billion people using this. So I know that we're really at the early stage of blockchain. We don't have 1 billion people on blockchain. And my goal is that blockchain is going to be something that's ubiquitous, and it's just going to be a database technology. And you're not going to care that you're using it. You're just going to know my data stored here, and the details you don't care about. Like you don't care how the water gets to your house, or how the electricity comes in, or the plumbing, or the infrastructure. Infrastructure is the most important thing in our society, but no one actually cares about it, except when your toilet doesn't flush, and then you're dead. You know, your lights aren't on, and it's a disaster. But blockchain is still considered something novel. And when we're done with what we're doing at Skycoin, blockchain will just a database. You know, it's just going to be a choice. Do I use SQL or do I use blockchain? And it's all these blockchain, not because it's new, but because it's easier. It's better than SQL. It's easier than SQL. It's like, you know, I have to run 2 lines of code instead of 10. So I think that we want to get blockchain to the point that it's just a database technology, and it's considered boring, and it's being used by millions of people, and people don't even know they're using it. And that's really where I want to get with Skycoin. And I think most of the emphasis, all our competitors are just doing pump and dump. So, and I don't feel like we have any competitors. And I feel like if I don't do this, no one's going to do it, it's sad, but it is what it is.
And then finally, Synth, on the one hand, there's all this stuff going on in the world that we've talked about. And on the other hand, there's the rosy outlook in the crypto space. Bull run is coming. And I would, you know, invite people to check out Skycoin, do their own due diligence.
We have, there's an app that was built by conservatives being banned by Twitter. They're getting 2 million users a month. There's going to be apps coming out that are getting 2 million users a week. So we can potentially, in the next 2 years, if we do this right, if we do this right, we could, when this stuff is coming, it's inevitable. I already know exactly. I can tell you the people, the dates, implementation, what they've tried to do, and I can tell you they failed 95% of the time, but they just kept doing it 30 or 40 different ways until they got it working. Because you only need to get it done once, right? If you can do 40 ways and it works once, you've won. So they know that, and they're just gonna keep doing it and doing it and doing it so they get what they want. And I know what they want, and I know mostly how they're gonna do it. And what was just surprising me is how fast they got it done. And when they're done with what they're doing, there is going to be the opportunity for us to get 100 million users. If Bitcoin only has 100,000 people and we have 100 million users or even 1 million users on our blockchain platform, that's more than 10 times what Bitcoin has. So at that point, in terms of application development, it's more than Ethereum has. And during the last bubble, we had over 10,000 people running Skycoin nodes. So we had more nodes online than Ethereum did. And we didn't get to Ethereum's price, unfortunately. So I want to cry about that. But we had more people running our node than Ethereum did. So we were succeeding. And then I think we haven't seen the first 1 million developers get onto blockchain. And that's what I want to see. Is I want to see 50 universities teaching our programming language for blockchain development. I want to see the first real video games on blockchain on our platform. And I don't see anyone that's even close to even trying to do the things that we've already succeeded in doing. And at this point, it's just getting it out there and marketing and waiting for this train wreck to come. And I thought that I was going to stay out of decentralized social media. I thought it was too dangerous. But I've had so many people come, and it's just been getting so bad. And